My son lost his hearing at age 6. Yesterday, he put on headphones and cried. The fever spiked to 104 while Liam was singing in the bathtub. One minute he was humming Daniel Tiger off-key. The next, his eyes rolled back and his body went rigid. I screamed for my wife Nora and we wrapped him in a towel, his skin burning against my chest. The ER doctor took one look at his stiff neck and said the word that stops parents' hearts, meningitis. What they didn't tell us in that moment, what we'd discover 6 days later when Liam came home, was that the bacteria had already destroyed his cochlear nerve, completely, irreversibly. At age 6, my son went from singing constantly to living in total silence, and the audiologist who delivered the diagnosis said there was nothing anyone could do. No hearing aids would help, no surgery could fix it. Liam was profoundly deaf and would be for the rest of his life. I watched him try to talk to his 4-year-old sister Penny the day after we got the diagnosis. Watched him yell, thinking he was speaking normally. Watched Penny's face crumple in confusion and fear at her brother's distorted voice. That's when something broke inside me. Not broke like giving up. Broke like the moment you realize you'll do anything, break any rule, spend any amount of time to fix what feels unfixable. Liam spiraled fast. Within 3 months, he'd stopped trying to talk, stopped playing with other kids, spent hours sitting in his room staring at nothing. His second-grade teacher called weekly with concerns. He wasn't participating, wasn't socializing, seemed depressed in ways that terrified her. We tried sign language, but Liam hated it, would throw fits and cover his eyes so he didn't have to watch us gesture. He wanted his old life back and couldn't understand why we couldn't just make his ears work again. The worst part was watching him watch Penny. She'd dance around the living room to songs he couldn't hear, and he'd sit on the couch with tears running down his face, his small hands pressed against the speaker, trying to feel vibrations that meant nothing. Music had been his favorite thing. He'd sung constantly before the meningitis, made up songs about dinosaurs and trucks and whatever crossed his mind. Now all of that was gone, and the kid who remained was angry and scared and disappearing into himself. By his 7th birthday, Liam had essentially stopped smiling. That's when I started lying to my wife about where I was going 3 nights a week. I told Nora I'd joined a grief support group for parents of disabled children. That wasn't technically untrue. I had joined one, attended twice, then stopped going because sitting in a circle talking about feelings wasn't going to help Liam hear music again. Instead, I started showing up at the university engineering lab where my old colleague Dennis worked on auditory research. I'd been an audio engineer before kids, had specialized in acoustic design and signal processing before corporate work paid better. Dennis had access to equipment I couldn't afford and expertise I didn't have, and when I explained what I wanted to build, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. A haptic vest that translates music into touch? That's not revolutionary. Those exist already, he said, pulling up commercial examples on his computer. They're crude, I told him. They're basic vibration. I want something that can translate complex musical information, that can let a deaf person experience a symphony with the same richness a hearing person does. Every instrument, every voice, every subtle dynamic change. I want my son to feel Beethoven the way Beethoven felt it when he was deaf. Dennis stared at me for a long moment, then said, "That's probably impossible." "Probably isn't definitely," I said. He smiled. "When can you start?" For 6 months, I spent 3 nights a week in that lab, while Nora thought I was at support group meetings. I'd come home at 10 p.m. smelling like solder and coffee, and she'd ask how the meeting was, and I'd lie and say it was helpful, that sharing with other parents made me feel less alone. The guilt ate at me, but I couldn't tell her what I was really doing. Not until I knew it would work. Not until I had something real to show her. Dennis and I built 17 prototypes. The first ones were disasters. Just random buzzing that conveyed no meaningful information. Version 8 showed promise. We could distinguish between bass and treble. Version 12 could separate 3 instruments. Version 15 could map an entire song with enough detail that when I wore it with my eyes closed, I could follow the melody through touch alone. It was extraordinary and terrifying. This feeling of music moving across my chest and back in waves and pulses and rhythms. And I'd stand there in the lab at midnight crying because Liam was going to be able to experience this, was going to get music back. Then, version 15 caught fire during testing. Literally caught fire. Started smoking from a motor that overheated, and I ripped it off my chest and watched 6 months of work burn in a metal trash can while the smoke alarm screamed. Dennis stood there with a fire extinguisher looking shaken, and I stood there watching smoke curl toward the ceiling thinking this was over. I'd failed. There was no time to start again. But what happened next changed everything. Full story is linked below or on my channel.